We are live.
Yeah.
It is Friday of May.
Of May, yeah.
of May. I'm Tricia Broderick,
I'm Diana Larsen.
and we've had a rough week. so normally we start off with what our topic is and things, but I think we should just, full transparency. I went to Vegas and then went to the Scrum gathering. I don't know what day of the week it is. And then you had Scrum gathering and did a full workshop all day yesterday.
Yeah.
And we may have squeezed in a little karaoke along the way.
Yeah, that could have had some impact. Yeah.
So our throats, our voices, they just sound
Yes.
experienced.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. We're going to go with that.
Yeah.
But we had already had this scheduled, although I did mess up when I was first resetting it for the 15th or at 12:15 versus 12:30. But we are live. We are here.
Yeah.
We'll give it our best because that's all you can do some days. And that's
right.
where we're at. So we do try to go live once a month on a topic related to that month. And it's May. So we were thinking, we thought of flowers and fruit and new. And so we went with growth and in the workplace. I mean, we're not going to give you tips about growing fruit like that.
Right. No.
But growth in the workplace. So maybe I'll let's kick this off with just kind of a general question is just like, I remember somebody once saying, oh, great, another learning opportunity, another way for me to grow, right? Like, and it's almost a little exhausting at times.
Yeah.
Well, if you had to summarize it a little bit, what's your main value of like that continuous growth and that looking for that rejuvenation and that new kind of, even especially the new growth, right?
Right. Well, right. Like part of, I was joking with you earlier, and part of my, all the things that are growing around me are sending out pollen, right? That also is. So I think about that, and I think about that growth. I mean, Carol Dweck talks about a growth mindset, and I think, I'm into continuous learning. We talk about all the time, and continuous improvement, but continuous growth is important too. Sort of continuous growth in self-awareness, continuous growth in my field, my profession, learning what's new out there, growing my awareness and skills in those arenas, and then growing and growing as a person. I think is really important. I'm with a little group of folks with the at the Agile PDX meetup, which the Agile PDX meetup is more than just a meetup. It's got lots and lots of things going on. And one of the things that's going on is a group of us have been working together for several years now on a project we call Agile Coaching Qualities. Okay. And the first set of qualities that we all absolutely agreed on was self-awareness, self-management, growing ourselves as persons. That in order to be a good coach, you've got to have some experience with that. Gives you empathy with other people who are growing. I think it fits actually our 4 C's coaching wheel. It's our coaching spiral, 4 C's of learning leaders from our book. That is all about growth. I'm growing my courage. I'm growing my compassion, growing in my confidence, and growing in my awareness of the complexity of the world.
Yeah.
And that those are all such important things. Yeah.
Can you hear the vacuum, or is that coming through on my speaker?
Because
I'm a little torn on not wanting whoever's vacuuming to stop and not wanting to interrupt the live. So
maybe if somebody wants to write in the comments that they can hear it, they can say, yeah, I can't hear it. So.
It's a little bit of a torn factor thing with it. Yeah. But I think you said something that I really want to call attention to specifically for me is I do sometimes differentiate. Yes, learning and growth is so intermingled, obviously, but there is a dynamic of getting a little of that momentum from that growth, being able to see that new or that additional, and not just feel like, oh, I'm always learning, I always don't seem to get it, and I'm out, right? Like, and having that little bit of growth, one, gets me my check marks, and we all know how I love my check marks. But two, it helps me to see that progress, and kind of inspire, like it helps keep me motivated for that learning, for that challenging myself, keeping me, because I like, oh, I can do that and I couldn't do that before, or I now know this and I didn't know that before. And Nancy just confirmed she can't hear the vacuum. So yes, whoever's vacuum is making me a happy person in my household right now. But for me, there's a little bit of learning can be tough. We talk a lot about that in the book in terms of inhibitors, and so when I see the growth, even if it's small, even if it's just a little bud, right? And it gives that little bit of momentum feeling for me. And that helps me tremendously when I'm going to always be facing learning and unknowns and things like that. I need a little bit of that momentum. And I get it from growth.
Right. And, I learned, paying attention to the people I'm around and everything over time, I have grown in my appreciation of my family, the family I grew up in, my close, not just my nuclear family, but the closest part of my extended family, in that at least I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I really was absolutely inculcated with a love of learning. I mean, that was a part of, we played a lot of games together. My parents both had a lot of siblings, and so I had a lot of cousins. And so whenever there was a family get together, we would play games together. We would do, and a lot of them were challenging games that you really did have to sort of learn your way through, right? How to do this and how to be successful at it and so on. And it wasn't so, and we had winners and losers, but it wasn't so much about the competition as it was about the being together and learning new stuff. And so, and also love of reading was another part of that. And so, that I think a lot of my growth comes from the fact that I came from a family that really fostered that sense of, I was surprised when I learned about the Carol Dweck's work, because I'm like,
oh, you're one of those natural growth mindset people.
Yeah,
I see you.
I just never, and maybe it was because there were also a lot of teachers in my family. So teachers never intimidated me. Oh, you're just like my Aunt Patty. Oh, well, and I lived with teachers. And so I never had that sort of fear of the classroom. And I think that, I really feel like that was a huge advantage to my later growth in life. Right.
So we can articulate various specific growths and stuff.
Yeah.
You said a word that makes me actually want to, I'm putting you on the spot here because these are always unscripted, so we never know what we're going to talk about. But you said the word surprise, and not for learning, but like, I guess what for your own growth in your career and what you've done, what's been surprising about the growth? Because you just highlighted, you kind of had that appreciation, but what's probably been surprising for you related to growth?
A thing I've been thinking about lately is the way that as I was growing up, I was very much the natural extrovert. I just wasn't satisfied.
I don't understand that at all.
That there were people around me and, we were interacting in some way, and clear up through my 20s and 30s. I think I stayed a very social person, but then when my work shifted to being mostly with software folks, with whom I felt like I've always had an affinity for technical folks. And so that, and then getting to understand the folks who were quieter and the value that they brought. And for a while, when I was facilitating meetings and things, or participating in meetings, I would say, my ability to just kind of keep churning out ideas and talking and, in a group, its highest and best purpose is giving the smart people time to think until they can come up with a really good idea that we need to move forward with. And and I'm contributing a little bit along the way, but to the fostering of that. But over time, I've really learned to appreciate a more introverted life. And I've discovered that I am becoming a lot more introverted. When I'm with people, I can extrovert, but I need the downtime now. I need the time to be able to just go and be by myself. And even at home with my family, it's like, okay, it's time for me to just go be alone and think my own thoughts and do my own thing. And so that is an appreciation that I have learned and grown into over time. It's that, when is the right time for me to be extroverting? I'm going to turn them into verbs. And when is that time that is the right time for me to be introverting? Right. And where's the kind of middle ground as well,
Yeah.
And
I do, as an extreme extrovert, people are always like, you don't want to you still just want to go home. I'm like, I'm still a human. I still am going to crash at some point. Right. Like, and I do think COVID helped me learn some of that a little bit too, of finding that space. I think the thing that's been surprising to me the most about my growth, because I always think of it as mine, right? Like nobody else cares. Nobody, like, this is my challenge, my growth, my hurdle, my whatever it is. And I think what's been surprising to me is how much it has been inspirational for other people in different ways, right? Yeah. And I mean, I'm even thinking about it being at the Scrum gathering this week. I've been working, personally on trying to learn to do a handstand, because that's what you do at my age, whatever. But me doing this actually had inspired somebody else to start learning. And then this week we actually kicked up to a wall and handstand together. And I think it was just cool. Like, I don't think of my growth as something that would inspire or motivate somebody else, right? And yet it does. But I can think of other people's growth that has totally inspired me, right? And so it's just something that I never really attribute to it, but it's this amazing, like, ripple effect. It's this amazing benefit that has an impact on the teams. And so when I not doing the handstand, but I think about it in the workplace, and I think about how many times I've had some growth that did end up inspiring somebody else, or somebody's growth inspired me. And I don't often think about that as one of the values or the benefits right away. And yet it is.
It definitely is. It's a bonus. I mean, you can think of it as
I like that word, bonus. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, we're also I don't know. I know I mean, it's one of those things that's so foundational that I think everybody feels it, but I really need to acknowledge that it's really me that feels it, and it's just so core, right? But that ability to be inspired by, and at the Scrum gathering, there was a great keynote on the first day. Oh my gosh. And I look across the table and you're crying and I'm
crying. No one told me I needed Kleenex for the keynote.
But the growth that he was talking about, he's I will mess up his name, but his first name is Eric. And if you go to the Global Scrum Gathering website, you could find more about him. But he told some stories of challenges in his life. I'm not going to try to tell his story for him. He told some stories about some challenges in his life. And then later on, he was adding in the stories about how he met these challenges and gave other people the opportunity to meet their challenges. And that, they would create these teams of people who, in different kinds of ways, by helping him and by him being visible in his need for help and his desire to grow, would attract these other people who had different desires to grow, by helping him, they achieved their goals too. And
Yeah,
it was
that's
just,
where I lost it. I
yeah,
was just
me
done.
too.
I was
Well,
just, I was,
yeah.
I was done.
Yeah. I mean, I always, that's been one of my weak spots for a long time is I always cry at like team training videos or videos about some organizational transformation that had these teams of people who got, love
Got
their work.
together.
And, that always gets me. That always gets me. And it was so funny to look across the table and see you crying too. But
Oh, no, I was totally.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I think, in the audience were crying for the main character, the speaker, and the challenge that he was. And, I could feel for him, but that doesn't get the tears from me. What gets the tears
it
from
was
me
the
is the
teamwork
joy
one
of
that
people
just,
working together.
whew.
Yeah, and growing together, working
Yeah,
together and
growing.
growing together. That just, that'll get me every time.
It's an interesting thing because when we talk about growing, and again, I'm going to try and separate it a little bit from the learning part. It's like the growing, I can see, whether it's objective. I always want objective measurement for growth for a little bit, and that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Is because if it's subjective, does it feel like I'm really learning and have I achieved something? Have I really grown? And I struggle with that a lot of times. And it's one of the inhibitors that can get to me is I go to this binary of either I got it all or I didn't. And I don't always look at that little tiny bit of growth along the way. And if it's too tiny, I just discount it, right? Or if I can't see it, it's not objective to really like going up a mountain. I can see, okay, what elevation did I make this time? Am I making it further the next time? But there's so many things, especially that we do, that's more subjective, that's harder to quantify, that's harder to see the growth tangibly and in a way that's very clear. And so it can be a little, I know I've had that moment of like, am I growing enough as a leader, or how's my facilitation skills? And that's where that growth part, where you're willing to do the learning, you're willing to engage. It's just, are you feeling the growth until you have that moment, right? Or a moment you're like, oh, I would not have handled that last year, right? But it can be hard to spot those, especially when they're so small. And that's one of the things I have to watch out for when I'm doing learning, is that I don't predicate so much on objective growth measurements as my basis of success.
Yeah.
And I have to be really careful about that, because it's motivating for me. It helps me to keep going, but it also can really deter me as well.
I was earlier this year, I was at the retrospective facilitators gathering, and I wish I knew who thought up this activity, but I think it's something you could easily do in a team or in a work group of people. And they gave us some envelopes. And they had us sit and journal a little bit in our own notebooks about the areas of growth that we were looking toward. Where did we want to get better at in ourselves and in our work, and whatever was important for us and up for us. And then we wrote like the top 3 things on the back bottom of the envelope. And then they took the flap and they taped it to the wall. So everybody had like a little open pocket. Yeah, on the wall, and it had your name on it and your areas of growth. And then they had all these, just not sticky, because this wouldn't have worked with stickies, but not sticky little squares of paper that were there. And that as the rest of us saw anyone stepping into that, trying something new in their area, or exhibiting that growth area as a strength or whatever, you write them a little note and stick it in the pocket. And then we all had our envelopes to bring back home. And I think that kind of feedback, when other people let you know that they can see that you are growing in the areas that you're really focusing on, the places where you really are intent, have put some attention and intention around growing. And then other people give you feedback and they say, I see that
that's great.
You're making these little incremental bits of progress. I see that you didn't interrupt as much in the meetings today, and I appreciate it. Right. And it was so fun writing those little notes. I
Oh.
really appreciate
Well,
it.
there's just so many benefits from that. Like
Yeah.
immediately like that, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
just registers true.
Yeah.
Well, we're at time already. And our voices made it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Almost.
Almost.
I needed one extra slurp of tea to kind of make it through. But yeah.
Make it through. Do you have anything upcoming public for people?
No, yesterday we just did the public. I'm going to be at the XP conference in Amsterdam, which is the 13th to 17th of June, something like that. And then also the Agile conference in July and Agile Australia in August. I haven't figured out a good training schedule yet, but I'll have some of those kinds of things to announce later. Yeah.
I don't have anything upcoming either myself. I think the summer is like conference season, not training season. And so all of my publics aren't until September, but I will be at TechWell in Vegas and the Agile Virtual Summit that is also in June this year. And I will also be headed to, I don't know the name of the conference, but I will be at a conference in Iowa in June as well. In addition to getting to do a session with you in Agile 2023. And so summer feels like conference season, less than training, public trainings, offerings. But we have scheduled our next live will be, and I looked at it, June 2nd at 9:30 in the morning. We got to do a little bit earlier that day just from our schedules and stuff. So we will be back live on June 2nd. But in the meantime, if you have feedback or checking out the book, Lead Without Blame, please let us know. It was really, I have to say, and totally not for the live. So if you're done with the growth conversation, you can bail out, right? It was so cool to be in person with you, to like have the book, to do that at the conference. Like it was another level of this experience. It was just amazing for me.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to remind people that when you say 9:30, you mean 9:30 Mountain Time.
Thank you.
Your mileage may vary where you live.
I don't know. I don't even know what day of the week it is really right now, let alone the time zone. So
no. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. But until then, take care and we'll wish you all the best.